Hey guys, welcome back to Vanish and Corrupt. I'm sharing a video with y'all today that is very important to me. It's a case that I have known about for a very long time, one that's kind of left me quite puzzled, and at the reality of knowing that the house fire had supposedly taken the lives of these two younger children, Chloie Leverette and Gage Daniel. Well, they lived with their grandparents and their mother struggled with an addiction. There's things about this case that don't really add up. In this video, this woman details it and she explains things pretty good. I feel like it's a little grainy, but I want to go over this with you guys, have y'all watch it, tell me y'all's insights in this. The fact that firefighters put out the fire and it took hours, yet I've seen house fires where people have been caught up in them. There is some remnants of them left behind. They had sifted through, hours and hours of debris just trying to find these two younger kids who just honestly seem to vanish. So we're going to get started. Y'all tell me what y'all think at the end of this video. Leave your comments. Thank you for being here as always.
About a case from 2012. 70-year-old Molli McClaran and her 72-year-old husband, Leon, who is better known as Bubba, lived in a home on Kingdom Road in rural Unionville, Tennessee, which is in Bedford County, about 40 miles southeast of Nashville. Also living in their home were Molli and Bubba's two grandchildren, Chloie Leverette, who is 9 years old, and Gage Daniel, who is 7. The children were staying with their grandparents while their mother, Cheryl Daniel, dealt with some drug addiction and mental health issues. Cheryl still saw her kids on a regular basis, was very much a part of their lives. She was working on herself to make a better life for not only herself, but also her children. She wanted to be the best mother she could be and let her parents care for her kids because she wanted what was best for them and knew that she wasn't in a position to raise them properly at that time. So that is why the kids were living with their grandma Molli and grandpa Bubba.
So first off, I want to say, as a recovering addict myself, I find kudos for the mother who realized that the best interest for the kids were to be with the grandparents. The thing that has bothered me is, knowing this case for a while now and how red it is and the things you would hear, it has always left me just kind of mind boggled and still at the worry of like, were the kids even in the home? Were they there? Like, it doesn't add up. I have tried and tried to dig for this, and yet for them to just vanish off the face of the earth. Yet when you hear in a minute that really the animals were found, but not much of anything else. And when I say that these people sifted through hours of debris just trying to find, like dental, anything to see if these kids were here, they find nothing. Not only do they do that, they run cadaver dogs, which never find anything either.
The grandparents had legal custody of them for the time being. They were helping Cheryl out, but they also loved being with their grandkids and having them around. Gage was especially close to his grandpa Bubba. He followed him everywhere. They were very, very close. Chloie was in the 4th grade and Gage was in 2nd grade at Unionville Community Elementary School. Both the children loved living with their grandparents. They particularly loved the animals. There was a pony. They had goats, chickens, dogs. They had a cousin that lived close by that they could play with. The kids were just really happy and well taken care of there. Sunday, September 23rd of 2012 seemed to be a normal day. Neighbors saw Chloie and Gage playing together outside the home in the yard around 6:30 p.m. But later that evening, around 10 o'clock, a passerby saw smoke and flames coming from the house and called 911. Firemen and police arrived quickly, but Bubba and Molli's farmhouse was already fully engulfed in flames. Battling the fire was difficult due to the fact that the house sat really far back from the road. There was like a long gravel driveway. And
now I want to touch base on this real quick. So given we know that you could do cremations and that bodies can absolutely be burned to the point to where they're in the, urine. Here's the problem I have. Most of the time, from what I understood, there is remnants left behind, even in that, at the point of like dental something that shows that there was a person once there. The thing is, I understand where things could be missed or something. I just, knowing the amount of work that went behind this is the problem I continue to have with this. And given it's 2012, these children are way, way older. And I would have thought that if they were alive, that the possibility of them being out in the open or being found would have been, it would have already happened. So unfortunately, I do feel like as if their life was taken from them. And then maybe there is a possibility that they were in this home, but it's something that has just left an impression on me that will forever haunt me. It's one of the very first cases that would get me really interested in, just wanting to learn about true crime, have a better understanding of it. I kept this stuff kind of quiet to myself for a long time. I told you guys that. But it is one of the very first cases that really just kind of stuck with me, being a young adult and just trying to have a better understanding of life and the things I was going through. There was kind of like a feeling of just resolve, not resolve, but reserve, right? Because this mother went through addiction. She did the right thing. She gave her kids a better life, gave them to her parents. And then for this to be the ending, that's it. It doesn't make sense to me.
There were no fire hydrants close by, so water had to be hauled in to fight the blaze, which of course took extra time. No one could enter the home because of the extreme heat, and it seemed sadly that no one inside the home had been able to get out. The blaze was intense and quickly caused the roof and the walls of the house to collapse. Firefighters spent hours battling the fire, and it was still smoldering on Monday morning as they began the process of trying to recover the bodies of Molli, Leon, Chloie, and little Gage. Investigators believed at the start that all four of them were asleep in their beds when the fire started and that all four had perished. But as they sifted through the debris, they only found remains belonging to Molli, Bubba, a miniature poodle, and a pet bird. I believe it was a cockatoo. They didn't find any remains belonging to Gage or Chloie. They brought in heavy machinery to lift and sort the larger, heavier.
Okay. So, again, when you think of cremations, there's some remnants left behind. The wild part to me is the individuals that they were looking for, and some of them being able to be located, whereas the two kids completely gone. Once again, I could understand the cremation policies and processes, right? And understand this is a house fire, so they're worlds apart. But again, they were able to locate the others. And given one of the details she just talks about is the house fire and how hot it was and how long it burned. Now, we do know that the fire temps are obviously going to be super elevated and it's going to be hard to control, and that absolutely could have gotten that hot. Yes. But for that whole home to go up in flames and for a certain area of the house to be different than the other, there's things about it that's just really got me caught off guard, because you're talking about the home being engulfed. You would think that being as hot as it was, if it would make two people completely vanish, then wouldn't it kind of done the same for all of them? That's just my thought on it. It's something that I really just lay here at night, and it's always going to, like I said, it's one of those cases that I just kind of think about from time to time. And being it's been a while and I've never shared this with you guys, I wanted y'all to take a look at this video, hear the story, do your homework, go to Reddit, read some stuff, go to the news articles, get a better idea of this. Are these two kids now grown, and are they around us in society, and maybe they have different names? I don't know. I would like to say that's a far stretch, but I really want to know what really happened. What caused this and what took place for somebody to feel as if this was needed.
Pieces of debris, searchers filled a half a dozen wheelbarrows with fine ashes from the fire, and they even set up sifting tray tables to go through every little bit, trying to find some trace of the children. Forensic anthropologists used yard rakes and even paintbrushes, trying to find a small bone fragment, a tooth, or something. Cadaver dogs also combed through all of the debris, but still no sign of either of the children were found. So They were probably thinking, okay, maybe this is somewhat positive news. Maybe the kids got out and ran because they were terrified. They could be somewhere close and just hiding out of fear. Search teams with sniffer dogs in tow fanned out around the area surrounding the home. Helicopters flew above using infrared, hoping to find Chloie and Gage somewhere near the property. But they didn't find them or any sign of them at all. They then began to wonder if it was possible someone had taken the children. Family members and people who knew the family were questioned. Cheryl, the children's mom, didn't have them. She fully cooperated with police. She even took a polygraph, passed it, and was cleared. Gage's father was also determined to have no involvement. Chloe's father had passed away years before.
Now, what we know is that in the court of law, in the state of Tennessee, lie detector test doesn't hold in the court of law. But the fact that she was willing to take it, all the things necessary, to eliminate her from being a suspect. I have to kind of eliminate her myself. But then I go back to this whole juggling thing, kind of like with Sebastian, right? I mean, could you do this? Could you think, well, maybe I could get insurance money on them? There's do you have policies? All the questions that played in Sebastian's case also play in play them with these, because these are questions I think are pertinent, right? That we have an idea of, okay, was there any malice in behind, anything that may have caused her, or, intention, they say, caused her to do this. In reality, there's not. I mean, she had a perfect world. She was trying to get help, get better. The parents were great parents. The kids had a great life. She knew she didn't have to worry about them. So talking about, could she do this, was one of the things in my head that I'm like, I don't see it. I don't see the reason why.
When Chloe was just a baby, multiple family members were checked into. None of them had the children. They had no suspects and weren't even sure a crime had taken place. A statewide endangered child alert was put out, flyers were distributed, and news stations reported that officials were looking for 2 children missing after a house fire. Now, according to the autopsy report, the cause of death for Molli and Bubba could not be determined due to the remains being severely charred. Both had to be identified by x-rays and DNA analysis. The medical examiner.
Okay, so this is where it gets your head thinking, right? You're sitting here thinking to yourself, wait a minute. Badly burned. We have no way to know if they were harmed or if their lives were taken pre-fire. So it leaves you with that question of, maybe somebody went in and done this. But, right, wait a minute, there's fire investigators that should have caught this if it was started, premeditated or something like that. So was it like a murder suicide plot, or was it anything that could have just been super malice? We don't know. And I sit here again showing you this video, constantly going over the things in my head trying to figure it out. And I think one of the things I could say is that it's always bothered me to no end, and I will continue to try to remember the case details that were most important, because a lot of times I will go down rabbit holes that are not needed. And y'all know this about me just as well as anybody else. I think we all do that. But again, these were kind of things I felt that were just very strange. Now, given the fire, how hot it got and how everything just ascended. I mean, dude, it literally took them, I think, 4 or 5 hours to put this fire out, if I'm not mistaken.
Found thermal fracture of the skulls, ribs, arm, and leg bones, and soot was found in their airways. Toxicology reports showed morphine and alprazolam. I'm not positive I'm pronouncing that right, but it was found in Molly's liver. She was taking these because she had been fighting breast cancer. In the Unsolved Mysteries podcast on the case, Cheryl mentions that Bubba and Molly's remains were found in the basement of the home and they were right beside each other. But Molly and Bubba did not sleep in the same bed or even in the same bedroom. In fact, their bedrooms were 20 to 30 feet apart, according to Cheryl. So she found it strange that they would be found that close to one another if they had been asleep in their beds.
Now, let me say this. This is something that I thought would be irrelevant. I'm just being honest about this. My grandparents loved each other dearly, but holy moly, my grandmother snored like a freight train coming through your house. So my granddad couldn't sleep. So guess where he slept? Plumb across the other side of the house in another room. Now, it didn't mean they didn't love each other. It just means that, hey, man, maybe they got together at fun time. Who knows? But when it comes to actually sleeping, there's like, hell no, you go that way, I'll go this way. That way I'm not slapping you throughout the night to wake up. So I do not find that to be strange with morally older people because I've seen that a lot, to be honest. I wasn't the only one that had grandparents like that. I remember going to school and weirdly enough, I would talk about that and be like, does anybody else's grandparents do that? And they're like, oh yeah, mine does. Or heck, my mom and dad does. So it was something I didn't find to be strange, to be honest with you.
When they passed away, it could not be determined whether they were alive when the fire started or not. Now that part confuses me because I assumed that if soot was found in their tracheas, then that would indicate that they were breathing and thus alive during the fire. A medical examiner, I am not though, so if you know the answer to that, let me know down in the comments. Multiple local, state, and national fire experts were called in to try to figure out what caused the fire and, how it started. There were dozens of propane tanks stored in the basement that Bubba had brought home and saved from his job at a propane company. Some of the tanks were empty, but a few still contained a little bit of fuel. Now, unlike kerosene, diesel, and gasoline, propane fuel has no expiration date. It stays potent even after being stored for years. Cheryl says those tanks had been in the basement for over 30 years, though, and nothing had ever happened with them. These tanks were stored in a part of the basement that was directly underneath Chloie.
Now, let me say this. I have seen multiple instances where somebody thought that, well, I had propane tanks. They've been there forever. You can actually look this up where it was 10 years down the road and a slow leak started because a gasket had failed that was inside of one of the close-off valves and something ignited. Now, that was one of the things I thought about because I'm like, at the possibility of this happening, could it be one of those things where maybe there was a slow leak, they never knew about it, finally enough was in the air, and then the moment something was able to spark it, like maybe she went to cook, maybe it was something like that, and then all of a sudden, it was unfortunate. But again, it doesn't help me understand where the kids went. And I'm beating myself up over this because it's something I go back to and think, okay, if the kids were in a room, morally the room's going to be close together or, the same room. And if they were somewhere on the side of the house that were away from where they were, then maybe there's a possibility that for some reason the fire was hotter over there and that's what's really happened. But again, I think in general, talking about propane tanks, things that could cause explosions after a fire started, I'm telling you guys, it's left me sitting here just thinking. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to share this with you guys, because it's something that I constantly just dive into, especially when I'm trying to get my mind off some other case and, something that's kind of just weighing me down. I go back to other cases a lot and just think and see if there's something that was missed, right? And I think most people do that.
In Gage's bedroom, and investigators say there was evidence some of the tanks had ruptured, but there was no indication any of them had caused an explosion. A basement door had been left open, which acted as a draft. It sucked air and heat from the fire straight up to the bedroom where Chloie and Gage slept. The basement door being left open was very unusual because Bubba stored his tools down there, and he was absolutely adamant about making sure that door was closed and secured every single night. There were a lot of items inside the home. Molly and Bubba were somewhat of hoarders. The sheriff said it was hard to navigate through the residence before the fire because the home was so full of stuff. And there had been several space heaters turned on throughout the home that evening since the weather outside was cooler. Molly, who, like I said, was suffering from breast cancer, was on oxygen. So she had oxygen tanks, and she was also a smoker. And I did read a report saying she did sometimes smoke in bed while on oxygen. So obviously, there were a lot of fire hazards in the home. Propane tanks, items stacked up, possibly close to space heaters, oxygen tanks, and lit cigarettes. Lots of different ways the fire could have possibly started if it was accidental.
Okay, so now this is where I was talking about that the possibility that the propane tank being right under them, possibly burning a lot higher than it should have, right? And so maybe the thought of, I don't even want to say it, but disintegrating somebody to the sheer fact of like they unrecognizable. But you would think, again, there's fragments somewhere, right? There has to be teeth, there has to be something. And I still just find it hard that it was to that point of where there was absolute nothing. Now, one of the things I will say is something I've thought about. If she was sick and she was a smoker, then is it possible that, unfortunately, she kind of fell asleep with the cigarette? And for whatever reason, that door being open, it kicked it. Now, if that's the case and the door had essentially been open and the gas seeping upstairs, and she was on an oxygen tank, knowing she ain't supposed to smoke with it either, then there's that. Or maybe, you know, her husband was scared. She was sick. And if she was to pass, well, he's raising those kids on his own, even though his daughter's there. But he knows that his daughter, I mean, let's just be honest, most addicts, even in recovery, take a while to be dependable because they have to develop a whole new way of living life. And so he maybe had these thoughts in his head, maybe thought, you know what? I can't do this. I don't know. And maybe he left the door open. He turned on one of the knobs or something like that. But again, you would think that the firefighters or somebody that was investigating it would have been like, oh, we found a tank that was open, or some kind of clue that this was set up to inevitably be the worst case scenario, an explosion, and it takes all their lives.
Accidental. They brought in the best of the best when it came to fire investigators, and yet they could not figure out what exactly started that fire. So still to this day, they aren't sure if it was arson, if someone had deliberately started the fire, or if it was an accident. But they did say they lean more towards it being an accident. So why were no remains of the children found? It takes 1400 to 1800 degrees Fahrenheit to cremate human remains. This level of heat reduces the body to dry bone fragments and basic elements. Now, even during a professional cremation in a cremation chamber, when they open the crematorium doors after a body has been in there, it's not just a pile of ashes ready to be put into an urn. There are bone fragments and sometimes teeth left, and these are ground down and then added to the ashes that are given back to the family. This house fire at the McClarans is believed to have reached around 1500 degrees. Experts say it is nearly impossible to destroy an entire human body, even a small one, in a house fire. You're gonna find something remaining. It is worth noting that
Now, see, this touches base on exactly what I was just saying. And she says it. I mean, the thing is it's nearly impossible for it to happen. Now, is there a one-off maybe that it did? Yeah. Again, I have to sit here and think that that's not possible. And even then, like she said, with the crematory, they have processes and policies, and I didn't know. Now, here's the thing. So she just said this, did not know that they grind the teeth down. That's neither here nor there. That freaks me out because I'd rather have a broke bone than a teeth bone or teeth problem, teeth bone. Anyways, y'all get what I mean. But at the end of the day, I think what we're all sitting here saying is, how does a house fire happen and these kids never be found? Now, let's go down a dark road real quick. What if they were stolen or the mom did something? Then is it possible they knew? Who knows? But what I could tell you now is this is 2012. We're at 2024, 25 actually. And I can truly tell you that I sit here just mind puzzled at the sheer thought of these two kids are somewhere, I mean, honest to God, just running around life and being somebody else. Like, no, they have to know of their past existence, right? Like you just don't forget who you were as a child. And I guess that's really it. And I sit here and think about that all the time. Like, if they were grown up and living their best life, how is it that you could just walk away from all this? And wouldn't there be a lot of trauma? I mean, come on now. I dealt with trauma as a kid and it carried with me as an adult, and it still does every day. So we'll let her wrap some things up and I'll finish up with you guys. But this is a case that's just really gotten me, and I wanted y'all to think a little bit. And I thought this would be a really good case for y'all to kind of think on and dig into, see what y'all think, see if it is what it is, if it's a house fire that's unfortunate that took their lives, or was there something far more sinister with this, where these kids maybe were unalived and put somewhere else and somebody couldn't handle it or deal with it? Only time will tell. And unfortunately, I don't know if we'll be here for that, So we'll let her finish up right here and then we'll jump back out of it. And
Molli and Bubba had recently made a change to their will. They had changed the beneficiary, so in the event of their death, everything would go to Chloie and Gage. This change had been made about a month prior to the fire, and it had been locked inside a safe located in the home. Before anyone asks, I do not know who the previous beneficiary had been. After the fire, it was discovered that the safe containing the new will was missing. It was not found in the debris. Now, I thought most safes were fireproof. I did my research, and that is not necessarily true. Some safes marketed as fireproof can't take the heat for more than 30 minutes before becoming damaged. A lot of models are rated for an hour of fire exposure. That's it. While some of the best safes you can buy carry a 2-hour fireproof rating. Despite what their labels say, some safes marketed as fireproof can melt. Beware of any company that calls their safe fireproof. There are no fireproof consumer safes on the market right now. They are all fire resistant, meaning that they can resist heat and smoke, and some also protect against water, but they only resist these elements for a period of time, usually only 30 minutes to 2.5 hours. We, of course, don't know what type of safe Bubba and Molli had, but the fire in their home burned for quite a while. It was still burning and smoldering in spots the following day. The fire was so hot that they said it liquefied metal. No walls were left standing. And 63,000.
okay. So that being said, when we think about the will being changed, now there's motive there. Let's say that the daughter knows that she's on that will. And quite frankly, they are older, so there wasn't much time left on that will. But again, you're talking about a woman who knew her children were in good hands. And at the end of the day, let's say they did pass away, she would still kind of be a beneficiary because she would have to watch over those children. And despite if they got money, whether it was a monthly ordeal, I don't know if anybody knows this, but let's say that your father or mother pass away while you're a child. Well, the state will pay you a set amount of dollars. I have no idea what that number is, but from what I understand, the way the will works, that if these kids are left anything, then they can guarantee whether it's 18, 21, it's whatever this will stipulates. But that also, that if the grandparents had custody and the mom could not fully take care of them, then essentially, would they get a check? Because I didn't know how that worked either, and I wasn't sure I was going to even mention it because I didn't want to sound dumb, but you get where I'm going with that. At the end of all this, what I think has happened here is that there could be two things, right? It could be that his wife being sick and knowing that he did have to take care of them, it could have scared him because, I mean, let's face it, maybe they're high school sweethearts and he couldn't imagine living life without her and knew that raising two kids on his own would be hard. And his daughter, well, let's be frank, isn't the person you'd want to raise kids with. Or it could be super malice. It could be the mom is the one to blame all along. And those kids maybe are somewhere off in the world, or she done away with them as well, just away from the property. I do have one more thing I could put in there. I think that is far-fetched, but the sheer thought that maybe he unalived those kids, could not live with himself, and then done the unimaginable, right? Took it all. I don't think that's the case. I am having a hard time chewing on this and have been for a very long time. There's never been any fragments turn up. Nothing to suggest that those kids were even there. That being said, the house fire did get to that smoldering 1500. And again, there's little fires the next day. And, you know, we all know how fires work. We just saw how California went. And again, it was crazy to see that structures that were once standing are completely demolished and gone. And yet you have a home right here, which is built in the older days. I would say a lot more, stable. I hate to say that, but again, propane tanks, things like that, things that would lead up to just being a bad ordeal where you have a lot of things that are just the perfect storm, you'd say. Again, it's the kid part that's always gotten me. Were they in that home? And could it be possible? The fact that metal was smoldered and mangled, to be honest with you, I don't know what word I was trying to use, but we're going to say mangled, right? Melted and mangled, to the simple fact of like, well, you did have a fire resistant safe, which I did know that was a thing. And I only knew that because I had an aunt that would have a house fire. It was a great aunt, and she had a safe and the damn thing melted, which was surprising. But again, the fires absolutely could have got to those temps. And I just wanted to make this video again to make you think, let you see another case, let you dig into this and see if there's any possibility that maybe this was malice and maybe the mom has gotten away with more than we thought, or maybe the pops had something to do with it. Or in the end, was it the grandma? We don't know. I know I'm very thankful to this woman putting out this video. I would absolutely say, please go check out her channel. I'll put the description down in my, the little info directional thingy, dude, and you can click on it. Again, I'm super excited to bring this to y'all. It's something I've really honestly kept it to myself because it is very kind of cut dry in a way where it's like it really either you're on one side or the other. The kids were in the home or they were not. And if they weren't, where are they now? Again, 2012 versus 25. That's a long time. These kids are adults long since. So I don't know. Y'all tell me what you think. And again, I think the best part about this is at the end of the day, we all have this general want to help, with children. And when it comes to missing kids, it's something that is not to be taken lightly. If y'all haven't heard, one of my good friends, Trevor Lee, is running for district over here in the state of Tennessee. And I think he's absolutely going to do that, make changes. And this man has done a lot. He's passed legislation. He's an incredible young man. He's made strides when it comes to domestic violence and also anything dealing with the missing kids. So, please be mindful and just remember this case is very old. It has a lot of what I'd say touchy things on Reddit. And just all I would say is don't take part in that stuff. But if you wanted a case to just kind of sink your teeth in to think about on, this is the one. Again, don't forget to support my good friend Trevor Lee. I'm proud of you, man. Until next time, like, share, subscribe, do all that fun shit. Peace.